Alright, welcome to the lure gathering guide for Eidolon Hunts. In this guide I will cover the most efficient lure routes for each part of the plains. To simplify this a bit, I have divided the plains into 5 different areas on which we will base our lure routes on, just so we don't have 28 different routes for each single terrorist spawn. These routes can be used by any kind of lure handler. It doesn't matter if you play Trinity, Wisp, or if you're handling lures as the TPS player. I won't include the 2 lures that have to be gathered during the terrorist fight, as those will generally be the first 2 lures I will pick up when I get the remaining 5, with some exceptions which I will explain. The first area we're going to take a look at is the central area of the plains. This is where the majority of the terrorist spawns are positioned, which also makes it the most common area we'll encounter during the hunts. There are 7 lures in this area that are very close to most of the spawns here, which allows us to be quite flexible with our route. This is important because certain terrorist spawns will block certain lure spawns. The second area is the big lake. There are 7 different terrorist spawns here, which all pretty much work the same way, except for long spawn, which is why I'm going to take a look at long spawn specifically, because it's probably the trickiest spawn in the game as a lure handler. The third part of the plains is this middle area, which is located behind the main Grenier camp. There are 4 terrorist spawns in this area, 1 at the lake in the back, 1 in the river, and 2 at the spring. This lure route will be very similar to both the main area lure route as well as the lake lure route, just because it's still relatively close. The second last zone we're going to take a look at is the far north of the plains, which houses 3 terrorist spawns in total. This is probably the easiest one to remember, as the lure route stays the same no matter which spawn you end up getting. Finally, we're going to take a look at Africa spawn. It's called Africa spawn because it's the furthest spawn in the game and it has its very own lure route. Some people really struggle finding lures here, so I hope we can fix that. Starting the actual footage, we're going to take a look at the main area first. As you can see, our terrorist has spawned in a geyser spawn, where we already have picked up the lure during the terrorist fight. This means it won't respawn here because we're too close, so we need to get our 5 remaining lures from somewhere else. The first lure I'll get is the one at the mining camp, then I'll fly over to the little pond for our second one. Now we're gonna head to Cliff to grab our third lure, where we'll also pick up 2 worms that have randomly spawned in. Finally, we're gonna grab the main camp lures and head back to terrorist as soon as we can afterwards. Now it's time for the lake area. This is a clip of a terrorist that has spawned in at long spawn. I will actually include the 2 lures I gathered during the fight, as those are a bit special on long spawn specifically. Otherwise, the spawn works pretty much the same way as all the other spawns around the lake. When it's time for us to gather our first lure of the terrorist, we fly to the southwest of the plains and pick up the 2 lures from this camp that is usually way too far away to be of any use to us, and then we just fly back to the terrorist. When the terrorist is down, we leave again to get our remaining 5 lures. We need to have all 8. Our first lure from long spawn is once again slightly different, as long spawn is the only time I actually collect a lure at East Camp after the quick charge. If it was any other spawn, I would just start at the lake lure, which is going to be our second lure in this case. Then I'll collect the 2 lures from main camp, 1 and 2, and the last one at Cliff. If I hadn't done East Camp, I would now get the last lure at Geyser. For the middle area, it's gonna look somewhat similar to the first 2, but there are 2 new lures that are positioned very close by for all 4 spawns here. Those 2 lures will also be the first 2 we get, although they won't always both respawn, depending on which terrorist spawn we have exactly. One at this mining camp here, and the other one next to this little mountain pond over here. Then we pretty much revert to the same lures we collected before, and we'll pick up a lake lure as well as both lures from main camp. In the north of the plains we will do the same lure out no matter which exact spawn it is. We always start at this big camp over here where we can get 2 lures very quickly. Then we fly up to the tower to the right to get number 3. The 4th lure will be right behind the tower in this little forest. And the last lure will be the one at the mining camp we already know from the last route. And in this case we spot some worms here, and if you're fast enough you will have the time to pick these up, so might as well do that. Finally, we can take a look at Africa spawn. A lot of people seem to struggle a lot if they get the spawn, probably because the lure out here has nothing to do with all the other spawns in the game. Our first 2 lures will be at this big tower camp all the way up here. Then we fly directly below that and pick up the 3rd lure. Number 4 will be behind this tree at this long camp southwest of the terror list. And the last lure will be down here below this huge overarching rock. That pretty much sums up this guide. We can now see a map with all the relevant lures marked accordingly. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments of this video. If you want to learn more about hunting and improve in your hunts, feel free to join Kyuzo's Eidolon Discord with the link in the description. I hope this helps. Good luck at your hunts.